Welcome to Verdun 1916. One shot, one new world. February 21st, 1916. The sky was the color of iron. I heard the first sound not of men but of steel clawing at the earth. The ground began to tremble. They said it was only the opening barrage, but I knew this was the beginning of something none of us had ever seen before. The words came from a small notebook, recovered decades later, its pages burned at the edges and stiffened by mud. It belonged to Lieutenant Pierre Lemercier of the 42nd French Artillery Regiment, stationed near the Meuse River on the western ridge of Verdun. His handwriting was mechanical, almost without emotion, a voice that knew its place inside the machinery of war. February 1916. The cold hung low over eastern France. The valleys were flooded with mist so thick that morning and evening became the same hour. Soldiers had stopped marking days. They measured time by the rhythm of the guns. Beneath the clay and chalk of Verdun's hills, tunnels had been dug for weeks. Inside them, men slept on wooden planks, their uniforms stiff with frost. The sound of boots on frozen mud echoed like metal striking stone. Outside, the French field guns stood in silence, rows of 75mm cannons pointing east wrapped in canvas, their bronze barrels dulled by rain. The German lines lay only a few kilometers away, hidden behind curtains of fog. Across that invisible frontier, an army of over 1 million men prepared to move. Each side knew the other was waiting. Each side pretended not to. Reports from the front described the air as heavy, almost electrical. Officers noted a static charge before dawn, as if the atmosphere itself was preparing for detonation. In the command post of the 42nd Regiment, orders were simple: hold position, return fire only when coordinates are confirmed. The men of Verdun were not yet aware that this battle would outlast every other, that it would consume an entire generation and redefine the language of warfare. The 75mm field gun, France's pride since 1897, stood at the center of it all. Its new hydro-pneumatic recoil system, a compact cylinder of steel oil and compressed air, allowed the barrel to absorb the shock of firing and return to aim in seconds. It was as engineers wrote a weapon that could think for itself. The soldiers didn't call it that. To them, it was simply the 75. They trusted it more than orders, more than luck, more than prayer. Somewhere across the Meuse, the Germans were aligning their 420mm howitzers, Dicke Bertha Fat, Bertha massive guns that could shatter concrete fortresses in 2 shots. Between these machines of precision and destruction lay a valley coated in frost and silence. Pigeons refused to fly over it. Horses trembled before the first sound. And then came that sound, a deep metallic crack that rolled like thunder through the trenches, followed by the tremor of earth and the vibration of air. Lemercier wrote again that day, "The ground no longer belongs to us. It belongs to the guns." The first barrage had begun. It would not end for 10 months. The French 75s answered in rhythm, their recoil systems hissing softly as they cycled. Crews loaded, fired, and wiped the breach again, counting shells as though counting heartbeats. Each explosion carved a new shape into the landscape: ridges, collapsing forests, flattening soil, turning liquid. From above, Verdun became less a place than a pulse, a pattern of impact and return. Across the front, signals flickered through field telegraphs. Temperature, pressure, wind coordinates losses. It was not chaos, it was arithmetic. For the first time, war began to behave like an equation. Lemercier's notebook recorded it without commentary. Fired 024 rounds between dawn and dusk. Recoil maintained. No deviation. The handwriting stops there. The rest of the page is marked only by oil and powder burns. Before we begin, leave a comment where you're listening from, and the exact second when the sound reached you. Tell us if you heard the first shot, or only the silence that followed, because in Verdun even silence had a shape, and every echo carried the weight of a new world being born. Lieutenant Pierre Lemercier belonged to the 42nd Artillery Regiment of the French Army, a regular field unit operating under the 3rd Army, commanded in 1916 by General Paul Chrétien. The regiment's records list Lemercier as a section officer responsible for 2 batteries of 75mm field guns positioned west of the Meuse River near the hamlet of Chattancourt. His surviving papers consist of a small pocket notebook, 14 letters to his family, and 2 formal reports addressed to regimental headquarters between February and March 1916. These documents form the primary source for the narrative used in this broadcast. The original notebook, written in pencil on coarse paper, was deposited in 1972 in the Archives nationales de guerre in Paris under catalogue code ANG Verdun 4275. The accompanying letters were transferred from private possession in Lyon by descendants of the Lemercier family in 1984 and added as supplementary items. The reports survive as carbon copies in the Service historique de la défense at Vincennes, file SHD-3H 1784, under the section Artillerie de Campagne Verdun 1916. The English translation used here was prepared in 2024 for the Archival Voice project, based on the first critical French edition, published by the Musée de l'Armée in 1998. All quoted material retains the original orthography and punctuation, including abbreviations and field notations. Dates follow the French military convention day before month. Metric measurements and artillery designations remain unconverted to preserve accuracy. The diary was not composed for publication. Internal evidence indicates that Lemercier began writing shortly before the German offensive of February 21, 1916, and continued until early March, when the notebook abruptly ends. The entries were likely intended as technical notes for later consolidation into an after-action report. Each entry opens with coordinates, temperature, and wind direction, followed by remarks on crew fatigue, ammunition expenditure, and mechanical performance of the guns. Only in 3 instances does the text depart from technical language to record observations of landscape or casualties. There are no political opinions, personal reflections, or moral judgments. The handwriting remains steady throughout, suggesting that the document was written during pauses between firing sequences rather than from memory afterward. A separate folder within the regimental archives contains cross-referenced documents from Lemercier's commanding officer, Captain Henri Delatour. Delatour's after-action report, dated March 10, 1916, verifies the presence of the new hydro-pneumatic recoil mechanism fitted to all 75mm field guns of his battery. The report also notes minor oil leakage after extended firing and recommends adjustment of pressure valves. This technical context situates Lemercier's notes thus within the French Army's broader transition from manual recoil absorption to fully self-recuperating systems. The 75mm Model 1897 with the Saint-Chamond hydraulic recoil cylinder was the standard field piece of the French forces at Verdun, capable of 15 rounds per minute with minimal deviation. Official manuals from the Direction de l'Artillerie describe its operation in purely mechanical terms, a piston moving through oil-compressing air within a secondary chamber to return the barrel to firing position. The innovation removed the need to re-aim after each shot and effectively transformed artillery from a positional weapon into a sustained fire instrument. The region in which Lemercier served was catalogued on the French military grid as Sector Ouest Verdun Zone Froid de Terre Chatancourt, elevation 290 meters. Meteorological data from the Service Météorologique Militaire confirm continuous freezing conditions from February 19th to 25th, with average temperatures below 3 degrees Celsius and daily mist readings of 80 to 90% saturation. Such conditions affected recoil oil viscosity, requiring constant heating of the hydro-pneumatic cylinders. Lemercier's notes mention this detail on February 22nd. Oiled pistons maintained warm using spirit lamps under breech. This corroborates maintenance guidelines distributed by the Artillery Command on February 15th, directing field units to prevent coagulation of viscous fluids. The precision of these notations provides internal verification of authenticity. The manuscript's chain of custody has been documented in full. After the battle, Lemercier's unit was relieved and redeployed to the Somme in July 1916. The notebook was recovered in 1917 by recovery teams of the Service de Santé Militaire during the clearance of abandoned gun positions near Morts-Hommes. An inventory note written by Sergeant Louis Perrin lists one small field notebook owner unknown recovered from collapsed emplacement number 14. The notebook remained unclaimed until 1933, when a Veterans Association in Nancy attempted to match it to service lists. The identification of the author as Pierre Lemercier occurred only in 1956 through comparison of handwriting with a surviving letter held by the Le Mercier family. A certification statement signed by archivist René Allard in 1960 confirmed authorship with 98% probability based on forensic handwriting analysis. The restored notebook was microfilmed in 1975 and digitized in 2019 as part of the Mémoire des Hommes program of the French Ministry of Defense. The present English version follows the order of the original notebook, interleaved with contextual material from Captain Delatour's reports and the Journal des Marches et d'Opérations of the 42nd Regiment. Each quotation has been checked against the microfilm reference to ensure textual fidelity. The translation team elected not to modernize technical terms. Therefore, expressions such as tir rapide, réducteur de recul, and piston freiné appear untranslated when read aloud in this program. Dates and locations have been standardized to the Gregorian calendar. Where the original text contains illegible words due to burn marks or oil stains, the missing letters are indicated in brackets. No conjectural reconstructions have been made. The tone of Le Mercier's writing is typical of professional artillery officers of the period. Comparison with diaries of Lieutenant Jean Laporte of the 37th Regiment and Captain Maurice Drouot of the 48th Regiment shows identical formatting abbreviations and shorthand symbols. These similarities indicate adherence to the official Carnet de Batterie standard introduced by the French Army in 1915 to regularize battlefield reporting. Each page was ruled in 6 columns: date, hour, position, number of rounds, fired remarks on equipment, and remarks on personnel. Le Mercier occasionally used the 6th column for personal notes, though these remain technical in content. His handwriting exhibits a trained script learned at the École Militaire de Fontainebleau, legible and precise. The absence of emotional vocabulary reflects both censorship rules and the professional culture of artillery officers who were expected to observe and measure rather than interpret. This context also clarifies why the diary's final entry ends abruptly. Regulations required field notebooks to be surrendered for duplication every 2 weeks. The interruption on March 3rd corresponds to the date when Le Mercier's battery underwent rotation, after which his section's records were merged into the regimental journal. No further personal notes from him have been located. There is no entry in the 1916 casualty lists under his name, suggesting that he survived the Verdun campaign, though his later service record remains incomplete. As a historical artifact, the Le Mercier notebook stands at the intersection of individual observation and institutional documentation. It contains no narrative flourishes and no commentary on strategy. Its value lies in precision time-stamps mechanical data and the repetition of procedure. For researchers of the early modern battlefield, such material provides a micro-scale view of how technology transformed human labor within the machinery of total war. The 75mm field gun and its hydro-pneumatic recoil system represented a turning point not only in engineering but also in perception. Through Le Mercier's technical vocabulary, we observe the moment when artillery fire became a continuous process, an industrial rhythm rather than an isolated act. That transformation is what makes this small notebook, recovered from the mud of Verdun, a document of world significance. February 21st, 1916. 06:40 hours. Temperature -4 degrees. Visibility nil. Orders received at 06:00. Hold fire until confirmation by observation post at Hill 304. Battery in position since 03:00. Crew condition good. Ammunition stock 250 shells per gun. Recoil cylinders filled, pressure maintained. These are the first lines of the Le Mercier notebook page, one written in thin graphite pencil that has faded to gray. The entry begins with measurements and routine verification. There are no remarks about the approaching offensive or the sound of the guns that would follow within minutes. The text proceeds like a logbook stripped of commentary. ZO 810. Enemy activity audible to the north. Sound of heavy transport. Estimate 420mm pieces moving into position. Observation not possible through fog. No counterfire ordered. This early record shows that Le Mercier was aware of the German preparations, but had received strict instructions not to reveal his own position. At that time, the French artillery relied on centralized fire control. Each battery waited for confirmation from higher command before opening fire. His task was to maintain readiness and record technical details. Zone 935. Conducted recoil test with reduced charge. Pressure stable. Gun number 3 slightly misaligned due to frost expansion of right trail. Correction applied using wooden wedges. Firing sound minimal. No vibration beyond limits. The handwriting remains clean and compact. On the next page he added 10:15. Message from observation. Post Freude. Prepare for possible fire on coordinates 47.3, 28.1. Awaiting verification. After this, the notebook contains a short paragraph written in smaller script, perhaps inserted later that morning. The men spoke little. Each waited for the first signal. In the fog, the barrels looked like frozen animals. This is one of only 3 sentences in the entire diary that carry a subjective tone. It is transcribed here verbatim without alteration. The following lines return immediately to technical procedure. 11 Hjorn, battery fully loaded, safety pins removed, lanyards checked, awaiting order. 11:13, observation post confirms target range, 7-200 miles. Orders counter battery fire. Signal rocket red. Commence firing sequence. From this point, Lemercier begins to list shots numerically, each one with time and adjustment. Shot 1 11:14. Sound pressure normal. No deviation. Shot 2 11:15. Recoil cylinder warm. Return perfect. Shot 3 11:16. Barrel temperature rising. Wind negligible. Shot 4 11:17. Minor shift due to frozen ground. Crew adjusted stance. The rhythm of these entries is mechanical. Every minute a new note, no adjectives, no verbs of emotion. The next full sentence breaks the pattern. At the 4th round, the fog lifted for an instant. The horizon flashed white, then gray again. He does not say what caused the flash. The diary resumes. 11:22. Target area invisible. Continue at 2-round intervals. No response from enemy yet. 11:25, first incoming shell landed 200 meters from left of position. Shock moderate. No damage. The first day's entry concludes at 17:10 after nearly 6 continuous hours of firing. The cumulative notes record 1024 shells discharged, 3 jams, and 1 replacement of a firing pin. The final line of the day reads, 17:10. Crew exhausted. Oil residue on piston blackened. No failure of recoil mechanism. Result satisfactory. There is no signature at the end of the page. The following day, February 22nd, begins with identical precision. 06:30, light snow, visibility 600 miles. Ordered to maintain harassing fire until further notice. Ammunition reduced to 160 shells per gun. Midway through the second page appears another brief observation of human tone. We no longer see the valley, only hear it breathing. The guns make a sound like water under ice. No additional description follows. The subsequent lines revert to the operational record. 09, communication line to observation, post cut by shell impact. Established temporary relay by signal lamp. Sign 20, received corrected range, adjust elevation -0.3, firing resumed. On February 23rd, Lemercier notes the first malfunction in the recoil cylinder. 0850. Leak detected at piston seal of gun number 2. Loss of pressure approx. 10 CM2. Temporary repair using rubber packing and wire clamp. Function restored within 15 minutes. He adds in brackets, the mechanic says the new system endures better than the men. This parenthetical remark is the only recorded dialogue in the entire notebook. It appears without attribution, and the context implies that the speaker was a member of the maintenance crew. The inclusion of the comment illustrates the emerging dependence of the battery on the new technology, a simple machine outlasting its operators. The next section of the notebook lists results from a firing test authorized by the Divisional Artillery Command on February 24th. Objective: compare accuracy after sustained fire. 600 rounds. Time span 08:0 16. 30. Result: mean deviation less than 12 mm. Pressure constant. Heat expansion negligible. Recommendation: continue using same oil mixture. Below this, Lemercier underlined a single line. System reliable under continuous use. No elaboration follows. The remainder of the day's entry consists of coordinates and numeric adjustments. He concludes, 1740. Enemy counterfire intensifies. Fort Douaumont reported hit. 1810. Ceasefire order. Night visibility nil. Men cleaning barrels. The handwriting begins to deteriorate slightly on February 25th, when the intensity of bombardment increased across the sector. Several words are overwritten. Still, the structure remains methodical. So 7:15. Observation post silent. No communication. So 8:00. New orders by runner independent fire on predetermined grid. Interval 26 seconds. Continue until ammunition depleted. 2 pages later, a single sentence appears alone between data lines. The valley has no color now, only sound. The report continues. 13 Hausrel. Gun number 1. 1 barrel overheated. Cooling with water from ration barrels. 1420. Pressure valves stable. Crew rotation effective. 16 Hausrel. Shell impact near position. 2 men wounded. Names recorded in medical register see annex. Firing continued. That note marks the first mention of casualties in the notebook. It is followed by technical closure. 17:30. Recoil test performed after engagement. Pressure within nominal range. Leakage negligible. On February 26th, the handwriting resumes in heavier strokes. Penciled margins indicate calculation of total rounds fired since start of Battle 2, 464. The last complete paragraph of the early section reads, "The recoil system remains the only constant. All else changes. Terrain unrecognizable. Fort Douaumont reported lost to enemy. Morale steady, awaiting resupply." This passage combines mechanical and situational facts. The note about Douaumont aligns with historical records confirming the German capture of the fort on that date. Lemercier offers no opinion on the event, no word of defeat or despair. His perspective remains confined to equipment and operation. The final legible entry of the first section, dated February 27th, ends mid-sentence. Weather worsening fog and sleet. Guns still responsive, though breech handles frozen. I believe the mechanism. The line stops there, the remaining space on the page darkened by an oil stain. The following page begins a new sequence headed March 1st, test after repairs. This transition divides the notebook into 2 parts. The first, these early records, forms the only continuous observation of the opening week of Verdun from within an active artillery battery. Its character is purely procedural, a mirror of the military system that produced it. Where another kind of document might have recorded emotion, this one measures pressure. Where others might have spoken of fear or endurance, it counts shells, minutes, and distance. Yet within those numbers, the presence of the war itself becomes clear enough to be heard. February 22nd, 1916. 0900 hours. Weather clear, ground frozen. Enemy artillery firing at irregular intervals, moderate intensity. Our counter batteries appear reduced. French field guns rapid, unusually stable. No sign of recoil movement. Sound pattern indicates automatic device. Report of Captain Ernst von Riedel III. Korps Artillerie, German Army Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv Freiburg File, RM 45-211. Von Riedel's report was among the first German observations of the hydro-pneumatic recoil system in action. His conclusion, automatic device, reflects uncertainty rather than discovery. In French records, the same hours are described as difficult, marked by mechanical strain and exhaustion. 0900. Oil residue thick from frost. Recoil slow to return. Crew fatigued. Adjusted valves. Notebook of Lieutenant Pierre Lemercier, 42nd Artillery Regiment, ANG Verdun 4275. The disparity between unusually stable and slow to return illustrates how distance and function alter perception. One observer sees perfection, the other imperfection. A second German account, written by Feldwebel Karl Brem, of the 9th Heavy Battery, offers a more personal record. The French guns fire without rest, like a machine. Every 30 seconds, the same strike. We call it the iron heartbeat. Yet many shells burst short, perhaps their barrels worn. Diary seized by French intelligence. Brim's iron heartbeat aligns with von Riedel's emphasis on rhythm, but contradicts his remark about precision. French ballistic tables from the same sector show deviation under 10 meters at 7 kilometers range, suggesting that premature bursts observed by Brem came from faulty perception or mixed calibers. French medical correspondence reveals a third dimension. Dr. René Vallin, surgeon attached to the 42nd Regiment, wrote to his superior on February 24th, continuous discharge without rest. Many men complain of ear pain and numbness of hands. Fatigue, serious though, discipline intact. Recoil cylinders intact. Men not. Archives du Service de Santé Militaire feel SSM Verdun, 1916. The final phrase, recoil cylinders intact. Men not, is identical in structure to a remark Lemercier noted from a mechanic 2 days earlier. Both appear independent, showing parallel awareness that endurance had shifted from human to mechanical limits. Official communiques released by the French Third Army the same day record no such strain. Artillery performing with exemplary constancy. Morale excellent. Journal des Marches et Opérations. Armée Armée. SHD 7N 4561. The contrast between public statement and internal medical note demonstrates administrative filtration of information. German engineers studying captured positions near Mort-Homme later produced an analysis dated March 3rd, recovered 175 mm gun intact. Mechanism simple, robust, undamaged after prolonged fire. French advantage lies in mechanical consistency, not quantity of guns. Recommend replication for 77 mm Feldkanon. Artillery Prüfungskommission Report No. 38, Berlin. At the same time, French maintenance logs from Bourges Arsenal list recurring leaks in recoil seals returned from the front. The technical superiority described by German engineers coexisted with French evidence of material wear. Each document is verifiable. Neither invalidates the other. Civil sources add further divergence. The mayor of Bras-sur-Meuse submitted a report to the Préfecture de la Meuse on February 25th. Constant vibration since 24th February. Walls cracked, livestock frightened, no direct hits. Sound continuous, ground trembling. His administrative tone lacks the language of fear present in a separate account from Sister Émilie Durand, nurse at the Verdun Field Hospital, written 2 days later. Patients wake and sleep to the same thunder. They ask if the earth has learned to breathe. Both witnesses experienced the same phenomenon, acoustic saturation, yet described it through incompatible registers, civic and sensory. Industrial correspondence from the Schneider-Creusot works, dated February 28th, provides another layer. Army reports perfect operation of recoil mechanisms, no failures received, production to increase to 50 units per day. The optimism of the manufacturer conflicts with field maintenance notes, documenting shortages of spare seals and freezing oil. The company's purpose was to reassure the Ministry of Armaments. Technical precision yielded to economic necessity. On March 1st, the German War Ministry issued its own summary. Enemy artillery weakened, French fire irregular and inaccurate. Yet aerial reconnaissance photographs, taken the same day by Fliegerabteilung 213, show sustained French muzzle flashes along the entire Chattancourt sector. Reconnaissance imagery thus contradicts written headquarters claims. Among private papers, one final contradiction survives. Captain Henri Delatour Lemercier's commanding officer wrote to his wife on February 27th, "Our battery performs beyond expectation. The new recoil device saves time and lives. I believe it will shorten the war." The next day, Lemercier's notebook closes with the unfinished line, "The mechanism." Delatour's letter anticipates triumph. The subordinate's record stops mid-word. These documents, reports, letters, diaries, communiques, speak about the same week and the same guns. Each confirms a detail while denying another. German observers describe supernatural steadiness. French officers report maintenance problems. Engineers praise mechanical perfection. Physicians record human deterioration. Civil authorities note vibration without destruction. Industrial managers announce success without evidence. None of the writers knew that their statements would one day share the same archive. Read together, they established no single truth, only the simultaneous validity of opposing facts, stability and breakdown, silence and thunder, precision and error. The record of Verdun expands not through certainty, but through contradiction, where every line written to prove order reveals another form of disorder underneath. March 1st, 1916. Weather moderate snow melting. Sector Chattancourt Froid-de-Terre active since dawn. Guns serviced after week of continuous fire. Pressure test satisfactory 100 10 2. Barrels cleaned and re-oiled. Ammunition resupply delayed. Men resting in shelters under hill. Notebook of Lieutenant Pierre Lemercier, Orhy's 2nd Artillery Regiment, ANG Verdun 4275. The middle portion of the Lemercier notebook begins after the first week of sustained fire. The entries from March 1st through March 8th form a record of maintenance resupply and gradual adaptation to new conditions. They describe neither triumph nor collapse, only persistence through technical adjustment. Each paragraph lists procedures and measurable effects. March 2nd. 0530. Test fire 2 rounds. Mechanism sound. No deviation. First enemy bombardment from north. 2 short impacts near number 3 gun. Shrapnel damage to wheel. Repaired within 20 minutes. 1140. Crew reports temporary dizziness due to fumes in shelter. Ventilation improved with canvas duct. Afternoon quiet. Pressure constant. The repetition of tests, repairs, and recorded timings reflects a routine already mechanical in rhythm. The following entry, dated March 3rd, includes the only explicit reference to the fall of Fort Douaumont. News received that Douaumont captured. No confirmation. Orders unchanged. Continue fire on grid 48.2, 28.5. Weather cold again. Fog thick. The absence of reaction underscores the compartmentalization of duty. The focus remains on operation, not outcome. Later that evening, Lemercier noted the arrival of reinforcements. 23. Sorrel. Replacement crews from 10th Battery joined. Average age 19. No prior service. Instructed them in use of recoil valve and gauge. Subsequent pages contain figures of ammunition expenditure and repair cycles. On March 4th, he wrote, total rounds since 21. February 3, 241. Oil changed twice. Pressure variation within normal limits. Cylinder of gun number 2 replaced. Crew efficiency restored. A separate report from Captain Henri Delatour confirms this repair. Filed March 5th at regimental headquarters, it states, recoil cylinder of Battery B replaced using spare from reserve depot. Operation executed in darkness without incident. Performance restored to specification. Report number 94, 1916 Archives de la 42e Régiment d'Artillerie. The French Artillery Command subsequently issued a directive on March 6th requiring all batteries to log recoil performance after every 500 shots. Lemercier's entry that day reads, logged data 3,625 total rounds. Gun temperature after sustained fire 86 degrees Celsius. Cylinder oil darkened but fluid. Cleaning performed at dusk. Men quiet, efficient. Between March 7th and 8th, the notebook contains several pages of numerical calculations, barrel wear coefficients, heat tolerance figures, and mechanical comparisons. The only narrative fragment occurs midway down a page. The fog hides everything but the sound. Each shell repeats the last one. No beginning, no end. After this line, the technical record resumes listing shell types and propellant charges. At the same time, higher-level documentation from the 3rd Army headquarters corroborates continued action in the same sector. The Journal des Marches et Opérations for March 8th records, enemy fire diminished. French artillery maintains regular rate. Weather improving. Terrain saturated with shell craters. Losses moderate. A maintenance bulletin issued March 9th by the Direction de l'Artillerie provides further quantitative data. Of 200 field guns inspected, 27 show seal degradation in recoil cylinders, 14 with valve damage, 3 destroyed by direct hit. General conditions satisfactory. This document confirms that despite visible strain, most mechanisms remained serviceable. It also mentions increased demand for glycerin oil as a recoil fluid additive, indicating a logistical shift to adapt to colder climates. On March 10th, Lemercier's handwriting changes slightly. The script broadens, perhaps written with a different pencil or under poorer light. No communication with observation post. Relay wires broken. Firing directed by sound only. Adjusted elevation by ear. 1430. Confirmed 3 hits on coordinates, 49.2, 27.9 by observation from adjacent battery. This line represents one of the earliest references in the French record to sound-ranging estimation, a technique that later became standard practice. Lemercier documents it as procedure without commentary on innovation. The following page includes additional details of casualty and damage. 15. Shell exploded near gun number 4. 2 killed, 3 wounded. Barrel undamaged. Removed remains at 16 seconds. Cleaned position. Firing resumed. Captain Delatour's formal report for the same incident adds, casualties handled by regimental medics. Battery resumed operation within 1 hour. Morale unchanged. The alignment between diary and report confirms factual reliability. No expression of grief or valor appears in either document. Both record the event as data. After March 10th, Lemercier's notes shorten, consisting of single-line entries. March 11th, maintenance, oil mixed with frost water. Replaced seals. March 12th, ammunition low. Sent request for 400 shells. March 13th, heavy bombardment. Recoil normal. By March 14th, the handwriting becomes irregular, perhaps due to fatigue. The entry reads, morning snow again. Continuous firing. Men exhausted. 1 valve jammed cleared manually. Report sent. A duplicate of that report found in the regimental correspondence provides further precision. After 4 320 rounds, total 1 valve jam on gun number 3 due to foreign particle in oil chamber. Cleaned and refilled. Time lost 12 minutes. The notebook's next complete entry, dated March 15th, describes temporary withdrawal for maintenance. Battery moved 400 miles west for protection. Dug new pits. All guns inspected. No structural defects. Awaiting resupply. In a subsequent notation at the bottom of the same page, Lemercier added a brief observation. Horses dead replaced with tractors from rear depot. This logistical remark coincides with the French Army's documented transition from horse-drawn to motorized artillery transport at Verdun. The detail appears as an operational update, not commentary. The final preserved pages of the notebook extend to March 18th. The entries maintain the same pattern, date, time, technical observation. The last continuous paragraph reads, 18 March, 05:00, dense fog. Recoil cylinders checked pressure uniform. 08:40, began firing on Douaumont Ridge. 12:00, enemy response moderate. 14:15, gun number 1 disabled by direct hit, breech shattered, 2 wounded. 14:40, fire resumed from remaining guns. 19 hours, ceasefire, maintenance begins. A final line follows beneath without punctuation. Night silent except for oil dripping from barrels. Beyond this, the manuscript contains only fragments, half-lines of measurements, and torn edges. The last recorded page ends with numbers corresponding to ammunition stock, and a note of total operational days 26. No signature, no closing statement. The pattern of detail remains consistent until the point where the paper itself is damaged. Complementary documentation from the regimental archive continues the chronology. A summary compiled by the 42nd Regiment's adjutant on March 20th reads, Battery B suffered losses of personnel, but maintained full operational status throughout engagement. Equipment efficient. Morale stable. Supplies sufficient. Weather improving. Another technical annex lists component wear after inspection. Piston rings of 3 recoil cylinders replaced. No cracks in barrel housing. Valves resealed. Recommend continued service. Together, these official records confirm that by mid-March, the artillery functioned normally, despite cumulative exhaustion. The mechanical notes of Lemercier and the bureaucratic tone of command reports converge on the same conclusion: continuity. Neither registers reflection or emotion, only persistence. The factual language holds through repetition, as if precision itself were endurance. The deeper section of the record shows not escalation, but maintenance, a system sustained until documentation ceases. March 19, 1916. Weather overcast. Temperature -2 degrees. Fog returning from the valley. Sound of enemy guns intermittent. Orders received: hold position, maintain readiness. The handwriting is thinner now, written in faint strokes that fade into the paper. The next lines follow without spacing. So 9:40. Pressure equal on all 4 cylinders. Crew reduced. Men from 10th Battery not returned. 10:05. Fire 3 test rounds. No recoil deviation. 11:15. Gun number 3 leaking oil near valve joint. Added mixture from reserve canister. Valve tightened manually. 12:00. Observation post reports German movement near Douaumont Ridge. Await further order. Each notation continues the same pattern time condition verification. The next line begins mid-sentence and breaks. 13:10. 2 shells landed behind position. Damage minor. 13:35. Barrel heated. Cooling with water. 13:42. Smoke dense. Cannot see. The word ends with a dash and no continuation. Below it, a smear of oil or soot crosses the page, blurring several characters. The remaining half page is blank except for one figure written near the bottom margin 4328. The number corresponds roughly to the total shells fired by the battery since the battle began. There are no further entries. The next page is torn at the top. Only partial lines remain. Check valve. Pressure low. Replacement due. Men moving shelter. Then nothing. The paper ends mid-fiber as if ripped from the binding. The final complete word preserved on the last fragment is night. No punctuation follows. When archivists catalogued the notebook in 1972, they described its conclusion as abrupt without closure. The final half-sheet carries traces of moisture damage and rust from a clasp, suggesting the notebook lay exposed before burial. There are no later annotations, no summary, no signature. The sequence ends exactly where the handwriting stops. All subsequent documentation, the regiment's reports, headquarters, correspondence, technical summaries, continue beyond this date, but the voice that carried these measurements, one entry after another, does not. There is no replacement author, no addendum. The notebook concludes not with a decision, but with absence. The last verified word written by Lieutenant Pierre Lemercier during the Battle of Verdun remains that single marked night. After it, the archive holds only silence. The surviving notebook was discovered in the spring of 1972 by a construction crew clearing an area for road repair near the western slope of Fort Douaumont. The workmen unearthed fragments of timber and metal that appeared to be parts of a gun emplacement. Among the remains was a corroded ammunition box, inside which lay a small book, its cover hardened by oil and soil. The find was reported to the local gendarmerie and transferred to the regional office of the Service des Travaux Publics. Within weeks, the notebook was identified as a military artifact and forwarded to the Archives Nationales de Guerre in Paris. Laboratory conservation began later that year. The paper was treated with deacidifying solution, its graphite lines stabilized under glass, and each page photographed. The archivist's report described the condition as fragile but legible incomplete after March 19, 1916. Initial cataloging assigned the document to an anonymous artillery officer. The identification of Lieutenant Pierre Lemercier came only after a comparison of handwriting samples. In 1956, a separate letter preserved by the Lemercier family in Lyon had been reproduced in a regimental history. Its script matched the notebook with remarkable precision. In 1960, archivist René Allard conducted a formal handwriting analysis using optical magnification. The match was confirmed at 98% probability sufficient for attribution. 2 decades later, the archive revised the catalogue to record Lemercier as author and reclassified the item as Journal d'Artillerie Verdun 1916. The notebook was microfilmed in 1975 and digitized in 2019 as part of France's National Digital Preservation Program, Mémoire des Hommes. No record has been found indicating what became of Lemercier himself. The official casualty rolls for 1916 contain no entry under his name, and no post-war pension files exist. The regimental returns for the 42nd Artillery list him as present for duty until April 1916, then omit further mention. It is possible that he was transferred to another unit or administrative post, but documentation is absent. A census of demobilized officers from 1919 includes one Pierre Lemercier engineer resident in Lyon, but the birth date does not align with that of the artillery officer. The absence of a definitive trace has left the author of the notebook suspended between anonymity and identification, known only through the discipline of his handwriting. The physical notebook remains under controlled conditions in the Archives nationales de guerre shelf code ANG Verdun 4275. It is housed within a climate-stabilized vault temperature, 18 degrees Celsius, humidity 45%. The pages are enclosed in transparent polyester sleeves. The binding is stored separately. Access to the original requires written authorization, but digital facsimiles are available to researchers. The last conservation review, completed in 2021, reports no further deterioration. Each page retains the faint impression of oil from the recoil cylinders that once filled the battery shelters. The black stains, once thought to be mold, have been confirmed as traces of gun lubricant containing graphite. The chemical residue explains why the handwriting, despite exposure, remains visible after more than a century. Scholars have since cited the Lemercier notebook as a unique record of industrialized artillery warfare. It appears in the bibliographies of studies by Jean-Pierre Toubiana La Mécanique du Feu, 1984, and David Pritchard Artillery and Modern Memory, 2007. Both works reference it as evidence of the transformation of human observation into mechanical notation. The notebook's precise timings and numerical structure have been used to reconstruct firing sequences and sound patterns during the first week of the Battle of Verdun. Data from its entries were correlated with seismic records from nearby observation posts, allowing historians to match written notes with physical tremors still measurable in surviving instruments. The diary thus functions not only as narrative but as data. Within the archives, the Lemercier file is accompanied by a supplementary dossier containing letters, field reports, and later correspondence between military historians debating the significance of the recoil system. One letter from engineer Jules Andrieux to General Estienne, dated 1917, describes the 75mm field gun as a weapon that breathes between shots. The phrase echoes remarks in the notebook itself. Such resonance has invited interpretations that exceed the technical. Yet the archive retains neutrality. Each document stands as an independent artifact, catalogued, numbered, and preserved without conjecture. The record remains factual, times, coordinates, material, condition, sequence. Beyond that, the institution maintains silence. The enduring question concerns why the notebook ceased on March 19, 1916. No accompanying page, no detached fragment, no continuation has surfaced. Excavations conducted in the 1990s near the coordinates noted in the diary revealed additional remnants of artillery shelters but no further personal effects. Theories remain unproven. Some suggest that Lemercier was reassigned. Others believe the notebook was simply lost during the unit's rotation. The archive itself offers no conclusion. It presents only the surviving trace 42 pages of graphite marks, 2 rusted clasps, and a final word written without punctuation. Today, the Lemercier notebook resides in a flat metal drawer among thousands of other field diaries. Its reference number differs from the rest, only by the suffix 75, a coincidence that links the document to the weapon it describes. The digital version, accessible worldwide, preserves the spacing of the handwriting, the smudges, and the empty half-page where the record ends. The institution lists its content under the category War Materials, Personal Observation, Artillery Operations, 1916. The archive provides no interpretation, only access. The voice that filled its pages is silent, but the silence itself continues to speak through preservation. Every measurement, every absent line forms part of the continuity of historical record. What remains is not conclusion, but endurance, a fragment sustained by paper metal and the persistence of documentation. It endures as a reminder that history survives less through certainty than through what has not been erased. The Lemercier notebook endures as one among many instruments of that memory, precise, incomplete, and still intact. And so, as you listen to this record, remember that its ending is not the moment the pen stopped, but the fact that the page survived. The next episode will examine another artifact of Verdun, a set of photographs taken by engineers at Fort Vaux, preserved on nitrate film, where light, rather than graphite, carried the memory of war. Until then, keep listening to the archives where silence holds its own history.